A man drank 10 cold ones and fell asleep outside. This is what happened to his brain. JP is a 72-year-old male presenting to the emergency room with headache, confusion, and disorientation. He was accompanied by his daughter, who told the admitting nurse that she had found him laying in the garden surrounded by beer cans and covered in his own vomit. Such a state was not too out of the ordinary for JP, but this time something was different. You see, JP is a frequent drinker. His daughter knows the drill. A few quick shakes and he'd usually get up and come back inside. Though on this occasion he wouldn't budge. JP's responses were jumbled and his speech incomprehensible. This time he's had a few too many, she thought. When she tried to take him back inside to get cleaned up, this routine broke down. JP fell down to the ground and couldn't get back up. Sensing something was wrong, she called a friend who helped him drive to the emergency room where we are now. On examination, JP was confused, the smell of alcohol and vomit emanating off of him. His speech was slurred and at times incomprehensible. He also appeared badly sunburned. It was clear that he'd been laying in the garden for quite some time before being found. He appeared to understand and follow commands, though his movements were sluggish and poorly coordinated. On attempting to get him to stand up, JP would instantly topple over. At the time, these findings were attributed to alcohol intoxication. However, on taking his observations, they found that JP had hypotension, tachycardia, a high respiratory rate, and a high temperature. These findings made the doctors take a second look at JP. After all, alcohol doesn't cause a fever. Could there be another cause to his confusion? These observations, a high fever, low blood pressure, and fast heart rate, could point towards an infection. To not waste any time, doctors commenced him on broad-spectrum antibiotics and tried to find the source. Doctors began working for the most common infections, with the first being a chest infection. They arranged JP a chest x-ray, though this came back normal. They sent off blood tests which came back and surprisingly didn't point towards an infection either, but did show signs of liver and kidney damage. This gave the doctors some clues as to what might be happening. Now, why would there be liver and kidney damage? Well, this again could be secondary to an infection. Organ damage can commonly occur in sepsis, but we've almost ruled it out at this point. No tests have been suggestive of this. The liver can be damaged in a multitude of ways. The alcohol you consume may have contributed to this, as it classically causes liver damage. One of the most common causes of kidney damage is dehydration, which would certainly fit JP's history. JP has been in the blazing sun for quite some time. Combined with the alcohol use, which increases the rate of urine production and water loss, this would cause quite a severe dehydration, which would explain JP's kidney injury. On that note, severe dehydration could also explain the liver damage. If you have a low circulatory volume, your blood is harder to pump around, and then this leads to reduced organ perfusion and hence injury. After coming to this conclusion, doctors prescribed aggressive fluids, and in the meantime they continued the antibiotics whilst they brainstormed other ideas. So again, we have dehydration, fever, confusion, disorientation, slurred speech, and vomiting. Severe dehydration could explain most of the symptoms, but doesn't explain the fever. Infection could again explain the majority of the symptoms too, but we've ran tests and these have came back negative. One of the doctors questioned if this could represent a meningitis, which is an infection of the membrane covering the brain and the spinal cord. This could explain how they've not yet found any source of the infection, and it would also link everything together. To test for this, they prepared a lumbar puncture kit. This is a test that involves taking a sample of the spinal fluid to test it for an infection. On wheeling the kit up to JP, he suddenly began shaking uncontrollably, prompting staff to pull the emergency buzzer. On attendance, doctors quickly determined that this was a seizure. At the 2-minute mark, they provided some medications to help get it under control. After the medication was administered, the episode terminated, but it was now clear they needed to get an answer, and fast. Repeat observations were taken just after the episode and revealed much the same: fever, low blood pressure, tachycardia, and a high respiratory rate. They reviewed the history again: the drinking, the vomiting, the confusion, and now seizure. Seizure again would fit with meningitis, but while revisiting the history they recalled a key element: the sunburn, the blazing heat, and the alcohol use. This prompted a thought to pop into the doctor's mind. Could it be heat stroke? Heat stroke is a condition where your internal temperature reaches dangerously high levels, typically above 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. These symptoms do fit that of JP's: confusion, vomiting, coordination difficulties, and now a new seizure. But in JP's case there's one exception. His body temperature is not high enough to meet the criteria for heat stroke. But this is when another realization hit the doctor. In medical school, he learned about the different sites where you can take someone's temperature. Realistically, you can get a patient's temperature from almost anywhere, but in most hospitals you put a thermometer in their ear. This temperature is known as the tympanic temperature. While this is generally fine for everyday purposes, it does have its limitations. When compared to taking a temperature via the rectum, tympanic temperature has been found to underestimate the true core temperature of a person. This underestimating can lead to missed fevers or possibly a delay in the diagnosis of heat stroke. Considering this, the doctors instructed a rectal thermometer reading to be taken, and sure enough his temperature came back elevated at 41.1 degrees Celsius, confirming the diagnosis. You may wonder, how did the doctors get confused in this instance? Well, heat stroke and alcohol use can present with similar symptoms, as they both affect the cerebellum, which is a region at the back of the brain. The cerebellum is responsible for coordination, balance, and fine voluntary movements. Damage to, or inhibition of this region can cause most of his symptoms: the slurred speech, the vomiting, the inability to stand and walk. This overlap of symptoms can muddy the water and send you down the wrong path, or lead you to make assumptions about the cause of someone's symptoms. This is why it's important not to be anchored by the history of alcohol use in this instance, and it also shows the importance of keeping an open mind about a broad differential. In heat stroke, time is brain. Any delay in cooling can cause risk of permanent brain damage. Doctors immediately began cooling JP, with the preferred method of cooling being ice bath immersion. This rapidly brings the core temperature down, stopping further damage and allowing the body to self-regulate again. You may wonder, what actually causes a heat stroke? Of course, being hot or being in a hot environment does, but why does the body seem to stop self-regulating after a certain point? Well, the hypothalamus is a region in the brain responsible for thermoregulation, also known as the regulation of core body temperature. The anterior portion, or the frontmost region, kicks in when the body gets too hot, and the posterior region kicks in when the body gets too cold. To cool down, the body will first dilate the vessels near the surface of the skin, leading to a characteristic flushed appearance. This vasodilation essentially turns your body into a radiator, transferring the heat from the inside of your body to the outside. The other thing your body will do, if this alone is not adequate to cool you down, is it will make you start sweating, and this can lead to further heat losses by evaporation. These mechanisms tend to work well up until a certain point, but past around 40 degrees Celsius, your hypothalamus essentially malfunctions, meaning even at this body temperature, mechanisms like sweating are absent. In JP's case, he was passed out outside with the sun beating down on him continuously. This added further heat to his body. This eventually overwhelmed him and led to him developing this heat stroke, hence causing all of his symptoms. So what happened to JP? Well, JP remained in hospital for a couple days. Doctors continued giving him IV fluids to rehydrate him, and continued to monitor his liver and kidney damage. He was eventually discharged after making a full recovery. Subscribe if you want to see more medicine explained in Minecraft. Everything you see in this video, including the functional monitor, was built by myself. If you want to see how I went about making these things, then be sure to check out my previous videos, and I'll see you in the next one. See you guys.